Hello everyone, my name is Beth and this is Busy Bee Stitches, my Flosstube channel that I have been very absent from over the past, I don't know, 9-10 months. But I'm back. I'm back and I'm making videos this year and I'm very excited. So you may have seen that I was making some Flossmas videos, just some quick updates here and there, but for the most part I haven't filmed since like February of last year, and I was way too busy. Something had to give, and so filming had to go away last year, but that's okay because I have time again. So I did still stitch though. I stitched quite a bit last year, so I would like to do a recap video, share with you how my stitching went last year. I'll also do a whip parade, and I will share with you what my plans are for this year. I may do that in multiple videos rather than one, just because it might get kind of long. Editing Beth will decide. It'll be a surprise. If this is your first like review video with me, let me just share with you that I keep quite a bit of data about my stitching. It's fun for me. I just like doing it. I started counting my stitches when I joined Magical Stitches in 2019? I think that was 2019. And I've been counting my stitches ever since. So I have data about each stitching session, how many stitches I stitched, how much time I spent, what projects I worked on, etc. So I am able to take a look at that data and just see what the trends are, see where I tend to focus, and how much I actually accomplished throughout the year. So I'm gonna go through that with you. Even I'll show you some graphs and charts. That'll be fun. If this type of nerding out is not for you, I will, if I don't make a second video for my whip parade, I will put like links in the description to jump ahead, to go past the nerdy stuff if you're not into it. So let's first start off with like what's up with me. What's been going on? What did I do last year? So primarily what I spent my year doing was planning my wedding and getting married, which was absolutely magical and fantastic. And I mean, it was everything I ever could have hoped and dreamed for and more. And now I get to be married, so that's really awesome. And also, I get to no longer be planning a wedding. There is a lot that I enjoyed about planning my wedding, and I'm glad that I only ever have to do it one time, ever. Never doing it again. I'm so happy. It was just a lot of work, and that was why I couldn't manage also filming on a regular basis. It was just too much stress, so I decided to focus on stitching and let my videos rest for a little while. But so that was the major event of the year. I also turned 30, which was fun and exciting. I went to a retreat. I went to StitchCon, and then immediately got COVID from having gone to StitchCon. So big bummer there. Do not recommend, 0 out of 10. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Then what else did I do? I moved to a new house. As you can see, my background is different from what you may be used to. And this is not an ideal spot in my house to be filming. I'm like sitting on my guest bed with nothing behind me. But I don't have like a good filming spot right now. We're in the process of finally getting to actually unpack our house and get our life in order again. Because we moved while we were wedding planning. We didn't plan to move. We didn't want to move, but we were forced to. And so, we just moved across town. It was, we didn't change our location really, but we sort of just threw things haphazardly in boxes and then just sort of left them there for 6 months. So now we're finally getting to unpack and get our lives back, which is really nice. And in addition to planning my own wedding, I also attended 4 other weddings, and a funeral, a 90th birthday party, and a bar mitzvah. So it was quite the busy year. And I enjoyed the majority of it, but it was definitely very busy. What else did I do? I saw a friend perform on Broadway, which was absolutely amazing and something I will never forget. And I guess the last notable thing about last year was that I actually completed Flossmas. I filmed every single day and posted every single day from December 1st to December 24th. And I've tried to do Flossmas before and fizzled out and not successfully gone all the way to the end. And I'm really, really proud that I stuck with it, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So yeah, that was my year. That was 2022, and now I'm excited for 2023. So let's talk about stitching. How did my stitching year go last year? I stitched for 642 hours throughout the year, and I stitched 94,128 stitches, which I just love seeing those numbers totaled up because it makes me feel really accomplished that I got that much stitching time in. With as busy as I was, I still made time for myself. So that makes me really happy. And then I calculate some like averages, but I don't tend to like averages because I'll have days where I'll stitch, 1,000 stitches in a day. That's not super common, but that does happen. And I've had days where I've stitched like 12 stitches in the day. And so those types of things tend to skew an average significantly. So I prefer looking at medians because it will throw out the outliers and focus more on what am I doing more regularly. And so that's, I think, more valuable information. So, I wanted to say on average, but it's not an average. On the median, I am putting in 4 days throughout the year on my projects, and about 10 hours on a project throughout the year, and 1,300 stitches. So, for how many projects I have, that's not too bad. Obviously, I have projects where I put in barely any progress, or I'm not counting projects that I put in no progress. But there are some projects that I pulled out for like a tiny little bit and barely did anything on, and there's some projects that I did like a ton on. But in general, 1,300 stitches on a project throughout the year is not so bad. I'd love it for it to be a little bit higher than that, but in general, that doesn't upset me. That feels pretty good. So now let me put up my first graph to show you. I have my stitching broken down by month, and this is just how many stitches per month I did. My best month was March, and closely followed by January and November. My worst months, I can very easily tell like why they were bad. February was the worst, and that was because in the month of February I was dealing with a lot of wrist pain and thumb pain, and I spent a bunch of time not able to stitch at all, which was really sad. And so clearly I was able to push through that because March was my best month. And so clearly the rest that I did in February was important, but it meant that February really sucked for stitching. And then September and October were not good stitching months because I got married in October. So September, the planning just like was really ramped up, and then October, obviously it was very ramped up, and then I was busy actually at my wedding, and then we didn't go on a honeymoon yet. We're going on our honeymoon in the spring, but we went on a little like mini honeymoon weekend away, and so that's what took up my September and October. So now let's talk about my projects. I worked on 38 projects in total. And I've got another graph for you here on the breakdown of the kinds of projects that I worked on. So I worked on about 58% were whips and the rest were new starts. And we're gonna talk about that a little more in a second. So I had 16 new starts in 2022. And I only have 5 of those left in my whip pile. So I finished 11 of the projects that I started, which is nice to not like inflate my whip pile a lot. But it means that I also spent a lot of time working on projects that I started and not as much time working on projects that I've had going for a while. And I've got another graph to show you here. 62% of the projects that I started this year were for gifts. I stitched wedding gifts for the weddings that we went to this year, and we went to 4 of them. And so that took up a considerable amount of my time. And for all the weddings we attended, those gifts were new starts. So that was predominantly why I started things. You can also see that I've got the next prominent category of starting is caused by 12 days of stitching. I started 3 things in 12 days of stitching, and so that was the next biggest reason why I started things. All right, then I have 17 finishes from 2022, and I've got another graph here to show you. 65% of those finishes were new starts, so that sort of like tracks from the other graphs that you saw. So that means that, you know, I'm finishing what I start, which is great, but again, I'm not working on and finishing as much of my older stuff. So that's really important for me to see that trend, and it helps me plan for next year. My finishes were, of the whips that I finished 1 project from 2019. I finished 3 projects from 2020 and 2 projects from 2021. I'm gonna do a finish parade later on in this video, and I'll show you all of those. And by the way, 2019 is the oldest year that I have projects from, so finishing a project from 2019 is really exciting. And then I had 17 projects in my whip pile from 2021 and before that I didn't touch at all in 2022. So I had intended to touch every single project of mine in 2022, and it just clearly did not happen. I didn't even get close. Most of the projects that I didn't touch were whips from 2021, but that's also the majority of my whip pile is from 2021. I started a lot that year. So that sort of makes sense. All right. So I'm actually think I'm gonna do some things in out of order of my notes here. Hold on, let me rearrange here. Yeah. All right, let's jump into the finish parade so I can actually show you what I finished this year. And I'm gonna go in order of when I finished them. And if it was a whip, I'll let you know when I started it. So there's a bunch of these that I don't have physically with me because they've already been gifted to their recipient. But I have pictures, so I'll insert those. All right, so the first finish of the year was Christmas Sweater by New Leaf Crafts. And I started this in 2020. I did modify this pattern. The original has words up here above the sweater, and I just took those out and modified the border to accommodate that. I really love this one. I love the fabric that I did it on. It's on Picture This Plus J, and it's really pretty. There were a lot of like flat fractionals and some blends and stuff in here, I think, but it was really fun to stitch. Next, this was my oldest finish. This is Old Faithful, and I got this, ooh, I should have gotten something to hold behind my projects because the sun is coming through. Here, I'll just hold up my stack behind it. So that is Old Faithful. It's by Barbara Bankser. And I got this as a kit when I went to Yellowstone in 2019. And yeah, so I started this in 2019, and that was my second finish of 2022. Next, we have a wedding gift that I'll post a picture of here. This is Marriage by My Big Toe, and this was a new start in 2022. And I picked colors based on my friend's wedding colors. Next, we have Sending Love. This was in World of Cross Stitch, and I think it was by Doreen Jones. I could be wrong, but I finished this as a card, and that was a new start this year. Next, we have the Slytherin House banner, and I modified this for my own uses. The pattern actually comes with all 4 houses, house banners in the style of Cursed Child. And I just picked out the Slytherin one because that was the show that I saw. My friend played Scorpius in Cursed Child, and so I went to see them in it, and it was fantastic. So I gave this as a gift to my friend, and it was very meaningful to me to be able to stitch this for them. And this pattern was by Pitbull and Fish, and then I just used one of the alphabets I have in my stash. I don't even remember which one for the words. Next, we have You Are Enough. I also have to post a picture of this one. This is by the Kitschy Cross Stitch. This is actually my second time stitching this pattern. And I also finished that as a card. And that was a new start this year as well. Then we have, again, a new start this year. This is Sunset by the Pigeon Coop. And I stitched this as a wedding present. And I am super, super happy with how this turned out. I absolutely love the frame on this one. And I did like chart my own words to go underneath of it. That's not from the Pigeon Coop design. Next we have this adorable dinosaur alphabet pattern by Lucy Heaton Cross Stitch Designs. She's on Etsy, and the way that ordering this works is that you like order on Etsy and you like do the personalization options and say what name you want, and then she generates the pattern and sends it to you. So you don't get the full alphabet, but you get the whatever you ask for. So my cousin was having a baby named John, and they're doing like dinosaur themed nursery. So I made this for my cousin and his new baby, and I absolutely love the FFOing on this one. This was very scary. I hate FFOing. I don't feel like I'm good at it. But thanks to the moral support of my CrossFit friends. They encouraged me to take a risk, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. And my cousin and his wife were absolutely over the moon. They loved it, and I believe it's hanging in his nursery now. And then again, continuing with the new start theme from 2022, we have Love You by Stitchy Princess. This is a pattern that is not always available in her shop. I think she makes it available for like a week, once a year. And I really love this. I changed the colors to match the wedding colors of a friend. And then I added the words myself. And I don't think I have a picture of this framed, but I got a frame from Modern Hoopla and framed it myself. And I actually got one of their like natural wood unfinished ones and painted it. And actually I think I did like a wood stain on it. And it turned out super cute, but I don't think I have a picture of that totally finished. And then next, this is the project that I am absolutely proudest of from the year. This is Chessboard by Peppermint Purple. I only have a picture of it because it's packed away in a box downstairs very safely and protected. But I started this in early 2020, and I worked on this in secret from my husband. And then I ended up giving it to him as a wedding present. So when I started this in 2020, my idea was that I was going to, stitch it for Christmas or something. And then when the pandemic started and my then boyfriend was home all the time, I couldn't stitch on it without exposing that I was working on it for him. And I wanted to keep it a secret. So it didn't get a lot of progress in 2020. And then 2021, he went back to work. I was able to work on it some here and there. And when he was out of town, but, then in 2022, I took a look and I realized that if I put in some concerted effort on it, I was going to be able to finish it by our wedding. So toward the end, I was working on it like for 45 minutes during my lunch hour, like every single day, while he was at work to try and get it finished for the wedding. And I got it finished like just before and not like the week before, but really, really close. And then I got to give it to him on our wedding day, and it was so special. He was surprised. He was completely surprised, which I am just shocked by. I cannot believe that it has been in my house for 3 years, nearly 3 years. And he's never accidentally stumbled upon it. He's never stumbled upon any of my videos that show me working on it. He's never, we're not super secretive with our phones with each other, like a normal healthy couple. And I've got pictures of it in my phone. He's never stumbled on those. I'm just completely shocked that he didn't find out about it. But he didn't. It was a surprise, and he loved it. And it was so special to get to give it to him. It's not FFO'd yet because I wanted to include him in deciding how we were going to finish it. And I think he just wants to frame it and have it on the wall to look at. He's got other chessboards that he can play on, and so he would just like to have this one to look at. So I think that's the plan. But I'd really like to get it framed in like a really, really excellent quality in archival style, just because of how long this took me. And how special it is to us. So next, I actually have this one to show you. Next, I finished Carrot Forest by Owl Forest Embroidery. I started this in 2020 for March Madness. And of course, the light showing through it. Here we go. There it is. This was so, so cute. And I really enjoyed stitching all of the carrots and the rabbits, but the border was absolutely miserable. There's nothing like wrong with it, it just wasn't enjoyable for me to stitch. You can see the border is very highly variegated. This is not an ideal filming position. You can see the border is very highly variegated. It goes from green to brown. And I just don't enjoy stitching on highly variegated floss. It's just not super fun for me because I have to think about it a lot. But at least like the carrots were like, you can see those are very highly variegated also, but like light orange to dark orange, or like light yellow to light orange, or light green to medium green. Like those are not so complicated, but the dark green to brown, I felt like was really stark and really hard to make that look more natural and intentional. So I just didn't really enjoy it. And then the shapes of these little border sections were just like, they were just annoying to stitch, and I stitched a lot of them. So I left a bunch, like I left over half of the border to the end, and it made it so that I was excited to push through and have it be done, but it was definitely like not a ton of fun to stitch at the end. But you know, I got it done and I'm really happy with the finished product. Next, we have, this one doesn't really have an official name, but it was a StitchCon freebie in 2021 by the Blue Flower, and I decided to stitch this to remember the night that we stayed up super late in the nighttime stitching room, and we just like had an absolute blast. And so here's what I did. This is a piece of Jody fabric, and I stitched it with some random silks and overdyes. I used some Ymir silk, I used like a Fibrolicious silk, and then some DMC, and I think a color, maybe a color in cotton, I forget. And it has the initials of the folks that were at that table, which was really fun. And at the top, I put After Dark. So I love that. And it was some repetitive stitching because these stars are like deceptively big, but I enjoyed that a lot, and I think it turned out really cool. Next, a new start for 2022, we have, this pattern is called Colorado because originally it said Colorado across the top, but I took that out and instead put in my cousin's name because this was a wedding present for my cousin who got married this past year. And so I put their name and their wedding date, and they live in Colorado and they love to ski. And so this was by far the largest gift that I made for somebody else. And it was worth it because they absolutely adore it. And it was a lot of block stitching, so that goes kind of faster, but it was still quite an undertaking. I stitched on it while I was sick with COVID, which was nice because I had a bunch of time and it was easy stitching. I didn't have to use a lot of brain on it. And it was honestly a really fun stitch, but it was definitely an undertaking. And that is by Box and Fox. Next, another new start in 2022, but this time not a gift. This one's for me. This is Autumn on the Square by Scissortail Designs, and I stitched 2 out of the 3 designs that it comes with. So we have this one, and then we have this one, and I'm gonna stitch it, I'm gonna finish it into a pillow that has a front and back. And I got this at Acorns and Threads in Portland, and that's where I went on my bachelorette. My bridesmaids and I rented a house in Portland and just hung out, and our intention was to like hang out and play board games all weekend. And we did that. We did a bunch of board games and hanging out. But when we went to Acorns and Threads, we went on the first day. And that was like the one thing that I was like, I want to go out to this shop. I've never been there before. I have heard about it. I've heard that it's cool. And I want to go. And none of my friends cross-stitch, and so they were just going to come with me and hang out. And they do other types of crafts, and so I thought they would, you know, have fun just browsing through the store. And they did. They had so much fun, in fact, that each of them individually found something that excited them enough that they came to me with it and was like, could you show me how to make this? And of course I was over the moon, emphatically like, yes, I will, I'm happy to teach you. And you know, I've never wanted to pressure my friends to like the things that I like. But the fact that like they have watched me stitch and watched me get joy from it, and then to decide that they wanted to do it themselves was just like so special and fun. And so each of them picked out projects that they wanted to learn on, and then we spent a lot of the weekend me teaching them how to stitch, and then us just sitting around and stitching together and chatting, and it was so special and fun. So I really wanted to start something that I got from Acorns and Threads to remember that trip. And to make it even more special, I started it on my bachelorette trip in September, and then I finished the second side of this in Connecticut on my wedding weekend. So I just, like, this is gonna be so special to me. I definitely think I have to get this FFO'd this year. And I think I'm capable of doing that myself. I think. All right. My next finish. I thought these were in order of finish, but they're not really. Here we go. I can reorder them, it's fine. So my next finish is this tiny little project. This is from the Timely Trinket series put out by Joseph's Workshop, and this is the April one. And I started this in Frogwarts 2021. I didn't write it down. Why didn't I write it down? I guess 2021. And I'd let it sit through all of 2021, and it was like, I put in an hour of work on it, but this is so tiny that the birds were like almost all finished. They didn't have the back stitching or their eyes, but that was like all that was left, and then I just had to put in the rain and the words on the top. And so I let it sit for the whole rest of 2021 and then the entirety of 2022, and in December I was like, I cannot allow this to go into my whip pile in 2023. So I finished it off real quick. And then we have another picture that I've got to show. This is December 9 patch by Primrose Cottage. I started this in December because I found out that my husband's family was having a Yankee swap, which is like a white elephant, but like not with joke things, like with actual nice things. It's just a way for like him and his cousins and stuff to be able to give each other gifts without having to get something for everyone. So of course I thought it would be nice to stitch something for my gift. And so I wanted to pick something that would be easy to finish up real quick, and not take up a ton of my time, because I was trying to focus on 12 days of stitching in December. So I stitched up this 9-patch, and I think it turned out super cute. It only took me like a day or 2 days maybe to stitch. And then I also got it FFO'd in December, which is probably the fastest turnaround I've ever done with FFOing a finish that I've done. And then my husband's cousin ended up getting this and she loved it. It did get stolen during the game. Actually, this was really funny. My husband did not watch me wrap my gift. He didn't see like how I wrapped it. And so he didn't know what my gift was in the pile of gifts. And so he just went for a nicely wrapped box. And of course he picks it up and I'm just like, no. I wanted somebody else to get this. I didn't want us to take this back home. Even though I love it and I would not be upset to have this ornament on my Christmas tree, the intent was to give it to somebody else. And so he picked it up and I was just like, no. And then he opened it and he was like, oh. Of course, not because he was upset, not that he wouldn't want it, but that again, like our intent was to give it away. And so, but it was okay because his cousin loved it and stole it, and she got to go home with it. So that was great. All right, and then my final finish of 2022, I finished this literally in like the last moments of the year, on New Year's Eve. This is, let me put something behind it so you can see it fully. This is Shalom. Oh God, here we go. This is Shalom by Mindy Shop, and I'm obsessed with this. I absolutely love this. This is definitely one of my favorite finishes of the year. This is a gift. I started it this year and finished it this year, and by this year I mean obviously last year. And in Hebrew this says Shalom, which means peace, and this will be a gift for my grandparents. And I'll probably finish it in a round frame, or at least a frame with a round mat. And they have like, you know, a very modern designed house. They love like bright colors and modern looks, and so I think they're really gonna love this. I'm going to visit them in February, so I really gotta get my butt moving to get this to the framer so that I can take it with me when I see them in February. Just gotta make sure that I have enough time to make it to my meeting. I'm filming this over my lunch. All right. Going back in time in my notes a little bit. So those were all of my finishes from the year. So let's talk about some stats. The projects that I worked the most on, all of these projects broke 5,000 stitches throughout the year. They were all finishes and they were all gifts. So number one by far was the chessboard. I worked on that for 52 days this year, 104 hours just this year, and over 17,000 stitches this year. And I count blackwork stitches like each leg is a half stitch. So 17,000 is like if I had done, if that's like 2 legs of back stitch is one stitch. So yeah, that was a lot. Then next, not nearly as many as that, was the project that I did for my cousin with the skis. And that's not super surprising because it was full coverage. And then next was the shalom that I did. Obviously, again, we've got full coverage, we've got backstitch, we've got a lot going on. So that one also broke 5,000 stitches. I think ski and shalom were, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think those were like, you know, 6,000-7,000, and then chessboard was 17,000. And I have a graph here, so I'll put it on the screen. I don't have it in front of my face to confirm, but you can see that those are clearly the top 3. And then there were 2 that were sort of like honorable mention. These both broke 4,500 stitches. Actually they both broke 4,600 stitches. Was the Cursed Child Slytherin flag and Carrot Forest. Carrot Forest was the only non-gift and the only whip in those 5. So I also have the sadness award goes to projects under 1,000 stitches. And honestly, these were both like under 500 stitches. Like these had barely any stitches. These might even be like under 100 stitches. Probably my graph is telling you better than my memory. The April Timely Trinket, that was like a stupid tiny amount of stitching, but I did finish that, so that one's not so sad. It was just sad that that was all I had left to do and I had left it in my whip pile. And then I also had a Mill Hill that I started. I think, did I even start it last year? Maybe I started it this year. Of course, I don't have it in front of me to check. But I put in like a handful of stitches on this project this year and decided that I needed to UFO it. And it's not because I didn't like the project, but because I was having a really hard time on the perforated paper. It's Cozy Feet by Mill Hill, and it's one of the like larger ones, like this big. And I can do like the small Mill Hill perforated paper, no problem, but the bigger ones, it's just like hurts my hand to hold it, and pulling the needle through the perforated paper, like you have to use 3 strands to get coverage, and then it's like the needle is like tough to pull it through, and the grasping strength that I need to hold onto the needle and pull it through the paper when there's, you know, stitches in the hole already, like just that repetitiveness like really exacerbates my thumb and wrist problems. And so I think I need to say no to Mill Hills above like the small size on perforated paper. I'm absolutely happy to do this project on fabric, and I really still like the project a lot. I just needed to not do it on the perforated paper. So I put in a handful of stitches on this project, went, nope, not so much for me. And I'll have to come back to that another time. I don't even have that in my whip pile. I just put it back into my stash, and I'll pick it back up another time. All right, time to share with you my takeaways from the year. So my major takeaway from the year is that gifts dominated my life in my stitching life in 2022. I spent so much time stitching gifts, and while that's awesome and my gifts were extremely well received, I'm very proud of them and I don't regret doing them, I am a little bit burned out of stitching gifts just because I feel like my whips are like missing me. And I don't want to say no new starts, but I want to stitch things for me. And I want to stitch things that I don't feel like I have a time pressure to complete, and that I can just enjoy. So, anyway, I think that, I don't regret stitching the gifts that I stitched. It just was a lot. It was a lot. Next, I worked on a lot of like really old projects and a lot of new starts. And I didn't work so much on my whips that were like a year old, or, you know, half a year old, or even 2 years old. Like I primarily worked on like really old stuff, trying to get those things completed. And then I worked on my new starts and my gifts. And so it's making me feel like I really want to put some more time into some of those projects that are in the middle of my whip pile. Next, I learned that I think I'm not gonna do whip go again. And I have a few reasons for that. Let me show my whip go board on the screen, and this is probably a good opportunity for me to change my camera battery, so look at whip go and I'll be right back. So as you can see on my whip go board, I didn't do super great. I did okay, but not super great. So let me explain what I like about whip go and what doesn't work for me with whip go. I really love setting goals, and whip go is what got me setting goals per project, which was really, really helpful. And I definitely want to keep doing that regardless of whether I use whip go or not. I also really enjoyed the random calls of whip go that like it would decide for me what projects I should focus on, and like I didn't have to pick. So I really appreciated that. But the things that didn't work so well for me is that I don't think I really like used the format the way that it would be most helpful. I intended to get a blackout with whip go. I wanted to reach all of the goals that I set for myself, and I don't think that's necessarily the point. It can be, and for some people that's helpful. But for me, the format of the board isn't really so useful if all I want to do is meet all those goals. And I also like didn't plan to reward myself at all for meeting the goals on my whip go board, which I think is, you know, you can do whip go however you want, but I think that's sort of intended, is that like you reach goals or you get a whip go and then you get to reward yourself with something, and I didn't really care about doing that. And I also think that that whip go is helpful if you want to like work on the project that is called when it's called, like in the month that it's called. And the way that I structured my goals, that wasn't really necessarily possible, just because I had kind of big goals on there. And so that meant that the randomness didn't end up really mattering, and I just got overwhelmed with it, and worked on the goals that were most achievable, and I tried to work on things that were like close to getting a whip go, but ultimately I just don't feel like the format is that useful to me, even though I have enjoyed doing it when I've done it. And related to this, I also learned that I'm not good at setting milestone goals for my projects. I capture all of this data about my stitching, and so I can make pretty decent, like achievable, reasonable goals for like stitch count. I can say, all right, stitching 500 stitches or stitching 1,000 stitches, whatever it is, like I can look at my data and see that expecting myself to stitch that much on a project in a month is reasonable. But for some reason on WhipGo, I've never wanted to just do like stitch count goals. And I don't know why that is, because I think most people do that. But I tried to make milestone goals where like I wanted to do a page finish, or I wanted to finish, you know, a certain number of motifs or a whole row or something. And those milestones ended up having way more stitches in them than I anticipated, and therefore the goals ended up being way less achievable. They were overwhelming, and that's why I didn't get very far on my WhipGo board, is because some of those goals were really massive. So I learned a lot about myself and a lot about the way that setting goals can help me or not help me. So that's very valuable for me going into my 2023 plans. I don't want to be late to the meeting that I have in 10 minutes. So I think I'm going to stop this video here, and then I'll do another video that will have my whip parade and my 2023 goals in it. So for now, thank you so much for watching this video and for following along with my 2022 progress. Thanks for hanging in here with me during my no posting desert of a year. And I am so excited for what 2023 has in store. So yeah, keep an eye out for those other videos. I don't know if it'll be one or two, but to come. And for this video, that's it, and I'll see you in the next one.